Hashtag Part 1. The salvage yards of Kepler Station stretched endlessly beneath the flickering amber lights, a graveyard of broken dreams and shattered hulls. Marcus Chun picked his way through the debris, his worn boots crunching on metal shavings and crystallized fuel residue. 3 months since the consortium had revoked his captain's license. 3 months since his crew had scattered to the solar winds. 3 months of scraping by on salvage runs that barely covered the cost of breathing recycled air. His scanner beeped softly, detecting something unusual beneath a pile of Vraxian engine components. Marcus paused, adjusting the frequency. The reading didn't match any standard alloy in the database. After 20 years spacing between human colonies and alien trade routes, he developed an instinct for valuable finds. This felt different. He cleared away the debris carefully, revealing what looked like a maintenance hatch, but the metal had a strange shimmer, like oil on water. The symbols etched into its surface weren't Vraxian, weren't from any species he recognized. They seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. Probably just another dead end, he muttered, but his hand were already working the plasma cutter. The hatch resisted at first, then, suddenly, gave way as if it had decided to let him in. The chamber beyond shouldn't have existed. The salvage report listed this as a standard Vraxian freighter, but Vraxian ships didn't have hidden compartments lined with that same shimmering metal. They definitely didn't have stasis fields still humming with power after what must have been decades floating dead in space. At the center of the chamber, suspended in a pillar of soft blue light, was an orb about the size of a child's head. It pulsed gently like a heartbeat, and Marcus felt something in his chest respond to its rhythm. The surface was smooth, appearing solid one moment, and liquid the next, covered in those same shifting symbols. Every instinct screamed at him to leave. Whatever this was, it was beyond his pay grade, beyond human understanding. But Marcus had learned long ago that when the universe offered you a gift, you didn't walk away. You especially didn't walk away when you had nothing left to lose. He reached for the orb. The moment his fingers made contact, the universe exploded behind his eyes. Information flooded his mind. Not words or images, but pure understanding. He saw civilizations rise and fall, watched stars being born and dying, felt the weight of eons pressing against his consciousness. And through it all, one truth blazed brighter than the rest. This wasn't just an artifact. It was a key. A key to what? He didn't know. But as the visions faded and he found himself back in the dim chamber, the orb warm in his hands, Marcus understood one thing with absolute certainty. The Galactic Consortium, the same body that had destroyed his life for refusing to transport slaves, would kill worlds to possess this. He tucked the orb inside his jacket and made his way back through the salvage yards. Every shadow could hide a consortium agent. Every passing worker might be an informant. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The girl couldn't have been more than 16 standard years, though it was hard to tell with mixed species. She had the distinctive blue-tinted skin of Zilani heritage, but her eyes, those were human, brown and defiant, even as she pressed herself against the waste processing unit, trying to disappear into the shadows. Marcus would have walked past, should have walked past, but those eyes stopped him. He'd seen that look before in refugee camps and quarantine zones across the galaxy. The look of someone who'd been told they didn't have the right to exist. "You're bleeding," he said quietly, noticing the dark stains spreading across her torn jumpsuit. She flinched but didn't run. "Not your problem, human." "No," Marcus agreed, "it's not." But he was already pulling out his med kit. "Consortium guards?" Her silence was answer enough. The Consortium had strict laws about genetic purity. A half-Zilani, half-human hybrid wouldn't just be illegal. She'd be considered an abomination. "My mother thought love was stronger than law," she said bitterly as he cleaned the wound on her shoulder. It looked like a grazer burn. "She died learning otherwise. My father." She trailed off. "Your father was the human," Marcus guessed. It was always the same story. The Consortium tolerated humans as trading partners, but considered them genetically inferior. Mixing bloodlines was the ultimate crime. "He tried to claim me," she whispered. "Said I was his daughter, that it shouldn't matter." They laughed as they threw him out the airlock. Marcus's hand stilled on the bandage. The weight of the orb against his chest suddenly felt heavier. Here was the consortium's true face, not the benevolent galactic government they pretended to be, but the cruel regime that decided who deserved to live based on the purity of their blood. "What's your name?" he asked. "Zara. Zara Chun." She looked up at him, defiance flickering in those human eyes. "Yes, Chun. Like you." He said it was a common name on Earth. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. Chun was common, yes, but the way she said it, the pride hidden beneath the pain. This girl had nothing left but a name and the will to survive. "Can you walk?" he asked. "Why?" Suspicion replaced defiance. "What do you want?" "Nothing," Marcus said, helping her to her feet. "But the night shift change is in 10 minutes, and the guards will sweep this sector. You need to move." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "There's a maintenance shaft 2 levels down. I've been hiding there, but..." Alarms suddenly screamed through the station. Not the regular shift change alerts, but the deep, bone-rattling klaxons reserved for major security breaches. Marcus's blood ran cold. Somehow they knew. The orb in his jacket seemed to pulse faster, matching his racing heartbeat. "That's not for me," Zara said, eyes wide. "No," Marcus agreed grimly, "it's for me." He made a decision that would change everything. "But they'll find you during the sweep. Come with me." "Why would you?" "Because," Marcus said, already moving, "the universe just gave me something powerful, and I've got a feeling it wasn't meant for the people who threw your father out an airlock." They ran through the service corridors, Marcus drawing on years of experience navigating stations. Behind them, he could hear the coordinated footsteps of consortium security forces. Too many. Too fast. Someone had been watching, waiting for him to find the orb. "This way," Zara gasped, pulling him toward a ventilation grate. "I know these ducts." It was a child's escape route, someone who'd spent months learning every hiding spot, every blind corner. Marcus followed her through the cramped spaces, his larger frame barely fitting, the orb pressed against his chest like a second heartbeat. They emerged in a storage bay near the docking ring. Marcus's old berth was 3 sections over, but he'd never make it. Security would have it locked down already. "There," Zara pointed to a battered shuttle, its registration marks scrubbed off. "Smuggler Special. The codes are probably still factory default." She was right. Marcus had the engines warming before security even realized they'd left the ventilation system. But as the shuttle lifted off, he saw the real problem through the viewport. 3 consortium cruisers, weapons already charging. "They'll vaporize us," Zara breathed. Marcus pulled out the orb. It pulsed brighter now, responding to his touch, to his intent. He still didn't understand what it was, but he understood what it could do. The knowledge was there, waiting like a word on the tip of his tongue. "Hold on," he said, gripping the orb tighter. Reality twisted. The shuttle didn't move. The universe moved around it. One moment they were staring down, consortium weapons. The next they were floating in empty space, light years from Kepler Station. Zara stared at him, then at the orb. "What is that thing?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted, tucking it back inside his jacket. "But I think it's time we found out." He set a course for the outer reaches, where consortium law was more suggestion than fact. As the stars streaked past, he glanced at the girl. No, the young woman beside him. Zara Chun, exile and survivor, with her father's name and her mother's courage. The consortium had taken everything from both of them. Marcus had stolen their greatest treasure in return. But what happened next would depend on a choice he hadn't expected to face. "Why did you save me?" Zara asked quietly as the shuttle settled into autopilot. Marcus thought about lying, about claiming altruism or human solidarity. But the orb had shown him too much truth to hide behind comfortable lies. "Because I'm tired of people like them deciding who gets to exist," he said. "And because..." He pulled out the orb, letting its light fill the small cabin. "I think this was meant for someone who understands what it means to be told you don't belong." Zara reached out hesitantly, her fingers hovering over the orb's surface. The moment she touched it, the light exploded outward, filling the shuttle with those impossible visions. But where Marcus had seen history, Zara saw potential. Where he'd felt the weight of ages, she felt the promise of tomorrow. "It's not a weapon," she whispered in awe. "It's something else. Something they fear more than any weapon." "What's that?" She looked at him with eyes that suddenly seemed ancient. "It's proof. Proof that their entire system is a lie. The pure bloodlines they worship, the genetic superiority they preach, it's all wrong. This thing, it shows the truth. That strength comes from diversity, from mixing, from everything they call impure. Marcus felt the rightness of her words in his bones. The orb hadn't chosen him. It had chosen her. He was just the messenger, the one broken enough to steal from gods and desperate enough to give the power to someone who'd been denied everything. Then, we'd better figure out how to use it, he said, because they're not going to stop looking for us. As if in response to his words, the shuttle's proximity alarm screamed. Consortium jump signatures, dozens of them, appearing all around their position. They tracked them somehow, followed them through impossible space. Marcus, Zara said calmly, the orb glowing brighter in her hands, I need you to trust me. We just met, he pointed out, even as his hands flew over the controls. And you gave me the power to reshape the galaxy, she countered. I'd say that earns a little faith. The lead cruiser's weapons locked on. In seconds, they'd be space dust. But Zara was smiling, the human expression on her Zilani features, and the orb was singing. There was no other word for it. A harmony that made Marcus's teeth ache and his heart sore. All those years they told me I was wrong, she said, that I was a mistake, an aberration. But this thing knows better. It knows what I am. What are you? The future, Zara said simply. And then she showed them all what that meant. The orb's light expanded outward, not as a weapon, but as revelation. It passed through the consortium ships, through their crews, through their carefully maintained genetic purity. And everywhere it touched, it revealed the truth. No species was pure. Every bloodline they protected, every genome they declared sacred, all of it was mixed, mingled, beautifully hybrid. The Zilani had human DNA from ancient encounters. The Vraxians carried Terra markers. Even the proud Altarians, who claimed to be the galaxy's first sapient species, were a mixture of a dozen different evolutionary paths. Marcus watched through the viewport as the consortium fleet hung frozen in space, their crews presumably dealing with the shattering of everything they believed. Some ships began to drift, their pilots too shocked to maintain control. Others powered down their weapons, as if suddenly, unsure what they were fighting for. We need to go, Zara said, the light fading back into the orb. She looked exhausted, but triumphant. That was just a taste. When they recover, they'll be angry. But some of them, she smiled, some of them will start asking questions. Marcus engaged the jump drive, picking a random vector. As reality twisted around them again, he wondered what he'd started. One theft, one act of kindness to a bleeding girl. And now the galaxy would never be the same. You know, they'll hunt us to the edge of existence, he said as they dropped back into normal space. Let them come, Zara replied, cradling the orb like a newborn star. We have something they can never defeat. The truth. Hope, she corrected. For every mixed blood child hidden in station slums. For every family torn apart by purity laws. For everyone who's been told they're wrong for existing. We're going to show them all that they're not mistakes. They're miracles. Marcus set a course for the frontier worlds, where the consortium's reach was weakest and hybrid populations lived in secret communities. He'd stolen from an alien artifact that had waited eons for the right moment. He'd given it to an exiled daughter who understood its purpose better in minutes than the consortium would in centuries. As the stars streaked past, Marcus Chun allowed himself a small smile. He'd lost everything. His ship, his crew, his place in civilized space. But, in return, he'd gained something worth more than all of it. He'd gained a chance to watch the galaxy discover what humanity had always known, that the greatest strength came not from purity, but from the beautiful, chaotic mixing of differences. And it had all started with a human too broken to follow the rules, and a girl too strong to accept them. The revolution had begun, and it had started with a theft, a gift, and the wild human audacity to believe that power belonged to those who'd been denied it longest. Hashtag Part 2, the frontier world of Havens, and lived up to its name. A last refuge at the edge of mapped space where the unwanted gathered to build lives from scraps and determination. Marcus guided their stolen shuttle through the planet's chaotic atmospheric entry, the shields screaming against air that didn't follow standard patterns. Everything about Haven's End was mixed, hybrid, defiant of classification. There, Zara pointed through the viewport at a sprawling settlement built into the canyon walls. Sanctuary City. My mother told me stories about it before. She trailed off, but her grip on the orb tightened. The landing pad was little more than scorched rock, but it was crowded with ships that told 1,000 stories of escape. Freighters with blast marks from consortium weapons. Personal yachts with their luxury stripped away for armor. Single-person pods that had carried desperate souls across impossible distances. Marcus powered down the engines and found himself surrounded by beings that shouldn't exist according to consortium law. A child with Altarian wings and human eyes played in the dirt nearby. A vendor with Vraxian chitinous skin and Zelani facial features hawked protein bars from a ramshackle stall. Everywhere he looked, he saw the beautiful impossibility of life that refused to follow genetic boundaries. Keep the orb hidden for now, Marcus advised as they descended the ramp. We don't know who's Zara. The voice came from a woman whose appearance defied every category. She had the elongated limbs of a Scyther, the golden skin of a Corvani, and eyes that were undeniably human. Those eyes were fixed on Zara with recognition that bordered on disbelief. Aunt Kaya, Zara's voice cracked. Mother said you were dead. The consortium reported. The consortium reports whatever serves their purpose, Kaya interrupted, pulling Zara into an embrace that spoke of family separated by cruel laws. Your mother sent word before they came for her. I've been watching the arrival logs for 3 years, hoping. She pulled back, studying Zara's face with tears threatening to spill. Then, her gaze shifted to Marcus, and something harder entered her expression. You're the one who stole from them. Every underground channel is buzzing with it. They say you took something from a First Maker vault. Marcus kept his expression neutral. First Maker. He'd heard whispers of the ancient race that had supposedly seeded the galaxy with life before vanishing. If the orb was their technology, it explained why it felt so far beyond current understanding. We need somewhere safe to talk, he said carefully. Kaya nodded, her many-species heritage making her expressions fascinatingly complex. Follow me. And welcome to Haven's End, where the only law is survival and the only crime is turning away family. She led them through streets that defied urban planning, past buildings cobbled together from salvaged ships and native stone. The people they passed were a living testament to the lie of genetic purity. Every possible combination of species, traits walked, flew, or skittered past. The consortium tried to raid us once, Kaya explained as they descended into an underground network of tunnels. 40 ships, full military deployment. They lasted 6 hours before retreating. How? Marcus asked, genuinely curious. Haven's End had no visible defenses, no military infrastructure. Kaya smiled with too many teeth, definitely some predator species in her ancestry. Because when you gather the rejected, the exiled, and the genetically impure, you also gather every trick, every adaptation, every survival trait the galaxy has to offer. Turns out, hybrid vigor isn't just a biological concept. The tunnels opened into a vast chamber that hummed with activity. Technology from a dozen different species had been combined in ways that would make consortium engineers weep. A Terran computer core networked with Zelani biocircuits. Vraxian power cells feeding Altarian shield generators. It was chaos that worked because no one had told them it shouldn't. The Council will want to meet you, Kaya said, gesturing to a raised platform where a group of beings waited. Fair warning, we don't much like humans here. Too many of your kind side with the consortium for trading privileges. Understandable, Marcus said. He'd seen enough human traders turn blind eyes to suffering for profit margins. The Council was 5 beings who represented the major refugee populations of Haven's End. Marcus recognized none of their specific heritage. They were all too mixed, too beautifully complicated. But their suspicion was universal as Kaya made introductions. So, the eldest, a being with scales that shifted color and eyes like stars, spoke first. You bring danger to our door. The consortium fleet masses at the border of wild space. They demand a return of their property and the terrorist who stole it. Their property, Zara said quietly, stepping forward, belongs to no one. She pulled out the orb, and the chamber fell silent. It pulsed with that familiar light, and Marcus watched the Council's hostility transform into something approaching awe. One member, young with features that blended avian and reptilian traits, actually gasped. First maker technology, they whispered. The legends are true. What legends? Marcus asked. The eldest leaned forward, scales shifting to deeper hues. Stories passed down from before the consortium rose to power. The first makers didn't vanish. They evolved beyond physical form. But they left gifts for those who would come after, hidden in places only the desperate would look. They say each artifact would choose its bearer when the time was right. When the galaxy was ready for change, another council member added, their voice harmonizing in impossible ways. When the lies had grown too heavy to bear, Zara held the orb higher, and it responded by projecting images into the air. Not the overwhelming visions from before, but clearer, more focused. They showed the truth of galactic history, how the consortium had risen not through merit but through systematic suppression of hybrid populations, how they'd rewritten genetic science to support their ideology, how they destroyed entire worlds that proved their theories wrong. This is why they fear it, Zara said. Not because it's a weapon, but because it's evidence. Proof that their entire civilization is built on lies. The council exchanged glances that spoke of years of shared struggle. Finally, the eldest stood. What do you intend to do with this truth? Share it, Zara said simply. With everyone. Every hidden colony, every oppressed population, every being told they're impure. But we need help. The orb shows truth, but truth alone doesn't change systems. Truth needs warriors, the young avian reptile said fiercely. And we have plenty of those. Marcus watched the discussion that followed with growing amazement. These people, refugees, exiles, genetic mistakes, began planning with the efficiency of those who'd spent their lives adapting to impossible situations. They spoke of hidden communication networks, of sympathizers within consortium space, of other frontier worlds ready to rise. There's something else, Kaya interjected. The deep scanners picked up an anomaly when you arrived. The orb, it's not just one artifact. It's calling to others. She brought up a holographic display showing Haven's end and the surrounding space. Scattered across the frontier were pulsing dots, each one matching the orb's energy signature. 7 more, Marcus counted, hidden across wild space. The first makers were thorough, the eldest said. One truth can be suppressed. 8, spreading simultaneously across the galaxy? That's revolution. Then, we need to find them, Zara said, determination hardening her young features. Before the consortium realizes what we're planning. We, the eldest asked. You're barely more than a child. I'm the daughter of forbidden love, Zara replied, steel in her voice. I'm living proof that their laws are wrong. And this orb chose me. Unless you have a better candidate. The silence that followed was its own answer. Marcus found himself appointed as pilot and protector, a role that felt both familiar and strange. He'd captained ships before, led crews through danger. But this was different. This wasn't about profit or survival. It was about reshaping the fundamental structure of galactic civilization. Over the next days, Haven's End transformed into a staging ground for the impossible. Ships were retrofitted with hybrid technology. Volunteers came forward. Pilots, fighters, medics, all united by their shared status as beings who shouldn't exist. Zara spent hours with the orb, learning its languages, understanding its purpose. She discovered she could share smaller revelations without overwhelming observers, allowing people to see their own genetic heritage clearly. The effect was profound. Beings who'd spent their lives ashamed of their mixed blood suddenly understood that they were exactly what nature intended. Evolution doesn't move backward, she explained to a gathering crowd one evening. It always pushes toward diversity, toward new combinations. The consortium hasn't been preserving genetic integrity. They've been fighting evolution itself. Marcus watched her speak and felt something he'd thought lost forever. Purpose. Not the purpose assigned by trade routes and cargo manifests, but something deeper, something human. She's remarkable, Caius said, joining him at the edge of the crowd. Her mother would be proud. She's also in danger, Marcus replied. The consortium won't stop. And when they realize what we're planning, they'll burn worlds to stop us, Caius finished. Which is why we need to move fast. The first expedition launched 3 days later. A small fleet of hybrid ships, each one an impossibility of mixed technology and determination. Their target was a dead world in the Kalos system, where the orb had sensed its sibling artifact. Marcus piloted the lead ship with Zara beside him. Behind them, a crew of mixed-species beings worked with harmony that would have baffled consortium observers. A human engineer with Vraxian implants fine-tuned engines alongside a Zelani-Altarian hybrid navigator. Their differences weren't obstacles, they were advantages. Jumping in 3, Marcus announced, "Remember, we don't know what defenses the first makers might have left." Space twisted, and they emerged in a system that shouldn't have been dead. The star was healthy, the planets in stable orbits. But there was no life, no energy signatures, nothing but the persistent pulse of the hidden artifact. There, Zara pointed to the third planet. "It's calling." They descended through an atmosphere that felt wrong. Too perfect, too still. The surface was covered in structures that looked grown rather than built, organic architecture that had fossilized into permanence. First Maker ruins, someone breathed over the comm, intact. The artifact's signal led them to what might have been a temple or a laboratory. With the First Makers, perhaps there was no difference. At its heart, protected by energy fields that parted at Zara's approach, was another orb. This one was darker, its surface like captured starlight. The moment Zara touched it, the ruins came alive. Not with threat, but with welcome. Holographic beings appeared. The First Makers themselves, or at least their recorded memories. They were beautiful and terrible, constantly shifting between forms, never settling on one shape. Children of diversity. The recording spoke in a language everyone somehow understood. "You have found a second truth. Not just that mixing strengthens, but that stagnation dooms. We left not because we failed, but because we succeeded too well. We achieved genetic perfection and nearly died from it. Only by shattering our purity, by mixing with the chaos of younger species, did we evolve beyond physical limitation." The second orb pulsed in harmony with the first, and Zara gasped as new understanding flooded through her. "It's not just evidence," she said. "It's instruction. How to activate dormant hybrid traits. How to unlock potential the consortium has suppressed." Marcus felt the ship's comms system explode with chatter as the implications hit the crew. If they could awaken suppressed abilities in hybrid populations, they wouldn't just be revealing truth, they'd be creating an army of beings more capable than their pure oppressors. "We need to get this back to Haven's End," Marcus decided. Kaya's people need to, alarm screamed. Consortium ships, dropping out of hyperspace in perfect attack formation. Somehow they'd been tracked. 30 vessels, the navigator reported, fear creeping into their voice. Including a Decimator-class battleship. Marcus had seen Decimators in action. They could crack moons, sterilize planets. Against their small fleet, it would be slaughter. "All ships, scatter pattern Omega," he commanded, hands flying over controls. "No," Zara interrupted, holding both orbs. "We stand. Zara, we can't fight a Decimator with good intentions and genetic diversity." She smiled, and for a moment she looked ancient, touched by First Maker wisdom. "Watch." The two orbs rose from her hands, spinning around each other in accelerating orbits. Energy built between them, not destructive, but transformative. It reached out to their hybrid crew, to their cobbled-together ships, to the very fabric of space around them. Marcus felt it first as warmth in his chest, then as electricity in his nerves. His vision sharpened beyond human normal. His reflexes accelerated. Around him, the crew was changing too, dormant abilities awakening, hybrid advantages manifesting. "All ships," Zara's voice rang through the comms, carrying new authority. "Remember what they called you. Mistakes. Abominations. Impure. Now show them what evolution really looks like." The consortium fleet opened fire, expecting easy victory. Instead, they found their targeting systems confused by ships that moved in patterns no pure species could manage. Their shields, designed to stop conventional weapons, buckled under attacks that combined energy signatures from 6 different species. Marcus flew like he'd never flown before, his human creativity enhanced by reflexes no baseline human possessed. The ship responded to his thoughts as much as his hands, the hybrid technology finally, finding a pilot who could match its potential. But it was Zara who turned the tide. Standing in the center of the bridge, the two orbs orbiting her like binary stars, she reached out to the consortium fleet itself. Not to their ships, but to their crews. "You have hybrids among you," she broadcast on all frequencies. "Hidden, passing as pure, living in fear. Feel the truth. You're not alone. You're not wrong. You are the future they fear." Across the consortium fleet, careful facades cracked. Officers who'd hidden their heritage for decades suddenly felt their suppressed abilities awakening. Navigators with mixed bloodlines found themselves seeing jump routes no pure species could perceive. Engineers with hybrid genetics understood their ships in ways that defied their training. The Decimator's main gun powered up, preparing to end the uprising with overwhelming force. But its firing sequence stuttered, then failed. On the bridge, Marcus would later learn, the weapons officer, a quarter-Zilani who'd hidden it her entire career, had seen the truth and decided she was done firing on her own kind. "All consortium vessels," a new voice crackled across the comms. Not from the Decimator, but from one of the escort cruisers. "This is Captain Therin Sol. I'm 3/8 human, 1/4 Raxian, and the rest is a mix I've spent 40 years hiding. I'm done. Anyone else who's tired of pretending, now's your chance." The neat consortium formation dissolved into chaos. Some ships held firm, crews too indoctrinated or too pure to change. But others began to drift, to power down weapons, to question everything. 2 escort vessels actually changed course, taking defensive positions around the hybrid fleet. The Decimator's admiral, pure Altarian bloodline traced back 15 generations, made one last attempt to restore order. "Traitors and abominations, you disgrace your uniforms, your species, your..." His transmission cut off as his bridge crew mutinied. Even among the pure, some had begun to question a system that would murder children for their mixed heritage. "We need to go," Marcus said quietly as the consortium fleet continued to tear itself apart. "This is just the beginning. They'll send more, and next time they won't make the mistake of bringing anyone with mixed blood." Zara nodded, exhaustion suddenly showing on her young face. The orbs settled back into her hands, their work done for now. "Haven's end first. Then the other artifacts. We have 5 more to find." As the hybrid fleet jumped away, leaving the consortium forces to their internal struggles, Marcus reflected on what had just happened. They'd won not through superior firepower or tactics, but by revealing a simple truth. The galaxy was already hybrid. The consortium's purity was the aberration, not the norm. "You realize what you've started?" he asked Zara as stars streaked past. "A revolution," she answered. "One truth at a time." The second orb pulsed in her hand, its starlight surface reflecting possibilities. 2 down, 5 to go. And, with each revelation, the galaxy's oppressed would find their strength, their voice, their power. Back on Haven's End, the successful mission sparked celebrations and preparations in equal measure. The second orb's knowledge spread through the population like wildfire. Beings who'd never known their full potential suddenly discovered abilities they'd been taught were impossible. A young hybrid with Scyther and human heritage found she could see heat patterns and emotional auras simultaneously. An elder with bloodlines from 4 different species realized why he'd always been able to broker peace between hostile groups. He could literally feel the common ground between different viewpoints. "This changes our entire defensive strategy," Kaya marveled as she watched her people train with newly awakened abilities. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting to show the galaxy what it could become." Marcus found himself appointed war chief, a title that would have amused his old crew. The smuggler who'd lost everything was now planning the overthrow of galactic government. But he approached it with the same methodical care he'd once used for navigation charts. "The consortium will regroup," he told the assembled leaders. "They'll purge their ranks of anyone with mixed heritage. They'll come at us with pure forces, overwhelming numbers. We need allies inside their space, and we need them fast." The broadcast is already spreading, a communication specialist reported. She was a fascinating mix of species that gave her an intuitive understanding of multiple transmission methods. Underground networks are sharing Zara's message. Hybrid populations in consortium space are organizing. "It's not enough," Marcus insisted. "We need the moderate pures, the ones who might not agree with the consortium's methods but have stayed silent. We need to show them that genetic diversity isn't a threat to their existence. How do we do that? Someone asked. Zara stood, the two orbs floating gently around her. We show them the third truth, the one the next artifact will reveal. She looked at the star chart, at the pulsing light that marked their next destination. The first makers didn't just mix species. They created new ones. Every pure bloodline in the galaxy, they're all artificial constructs designed and implemented by beings who understood that diversity needs both mixing and distinction. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If true, it would shatter the consortium's most fundamental belief that pure species were natural and mixing was corruption. When do we leave? A pilot asked, breaking the silence. Tomorrow, Marcus decided, but this time we go in force. The consortium knows what we're doing now. They'll have guards on every possible First Maker site. Let them come. The pilot grinned, her newly awakened spatial awareness making her eyes gleam with possibility. They're fighting the last war. We're creating the next one. That night, Marcus found Zura on the observation deck, watching Haven's and chaotic aurora paint the sky in impossible colors. The two orbs floated beside her, their light creating patterns that hurt to follow with baseline human vision. You're changing, he observed, sitting beside her. We all are, she replied. Even you. Haven't you noticed? Your reflexes, your perception, the way you process multiple data streams? The orbs don't just awaken hybrid abilities. They enhance whatever evolution has been quietly building. Marcus flexed his hand, noting the subtle ways his body had indeed changed. Nothing visible, but everything felt more integrated, more efficient. The First Makers really thought of everything. They thought of survival, Zara corrected, their own, and everyone who came after. The consortium thinks in terms of preservation. The First Makers thought in terms of potential. And you? Marcus asked. What do you think in terms of? She was quiet for a long moment, young face carrying weight beyond her years. Family, she finally said. All those hiding in shadows, marked as wrong for being born. All those who love across species lines. All those who just want to exist without apologizing for it. They're all family I haven't met yet. Marcus felt his throat tighten. This girl, this young woman, who'd lost everything to the consortium's hate, had somehow transformed that pain into purpose. Your father would be proud, he said quietly. Both of them would, she replied, and Marcus realized she meant him too. Somewhere between theft and revolution, they'd become family in all the ways that mattered. The next morning, 50 ships lifted off from Haven's End. Not a ragged fleet of refugees, but a coordinated force of beings who discovered their true potential. Each ship carried crews that would have been impossible under consortium law, combinations of species that created capabilities no pure crew could match. As they jumped toward the third artifact, Marcus felt the weight of what they'd started. Win or lose, the galaxy would never be the same. The truth was out, spreading like stellar wine through the void. The revolution had truly begun, and it had started with a human who stole from an alien and gave it to an exiled daughter, changing everything forever. Part 3. The consortium's response came faster than expected. As the hybrid fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the third artifact's location, they found themselves facing not a military blockade, but something far more insidious, a diplomatic envoy. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced, her mixed heritage giving her the ability to detect the subtle harmonics underneath the message. It's complex, multiple-layer encoding. Marcus studied the waiting ships. 3 sleek vessels with mirror hulls that reflected space itself, making them hard to track visually. No visible weapons, but that meant nothing with consortium technology. Let's hear it, he decided. The screen filled with a being that made Marcus's skin crawl. Ambassador Violent Koss, pure Altarian, with features so refined by selective breeding they looked almost artificial. But it was the eyes that unsettled. They held an intelligence that had calculated the cost of genocide and found it acceptable. Captain Chun, Violent's voice was cultured silk over steel. And young Zara, how fascinating to finally meet the terrorists who've thrown our civilization into chaos. We're not terrorists, Zara said firmly, the two orbs pulsing beside her. We're truth-tellers. Truth, Violen mused, steepling fingers that had never known labor. Such a flexible concept. May we discuss it? Face to face. I've come under flag of truce with an offer that might interest you. Every instinct Marcus had developed over 20 years of dealing with dangerous cargo screamed trap. But Zara was already nodding. We'll meet, she said. Neutral ground. That asteroid at bearing 27 Mark IV. You bring 2. We bring 2. Agreed. Violen smiled. And somehow that was worse than a threat. 1 hour. The channel closed, leaving the bridge in tense silence. It's a trap. Kaya's voice came through from her ship. The consortium doesn't negotiate with what they consider genetic waste. Of course it's a trap, Marcus agreed. But we need to know what kind. And maybe we can turn it around on them. The asteroid was a chunk of dead rock with just enough gravity to stand on. Marcus and Zara suited up, the orbs somehow maintaining their orbit around her, even in vacuum. As they approached the meeting site, Marcus noticed how the hybrid modifications were affecting him even through the suit. Enhanced perception picking up microdebris patterns, improved reflexes adjusting for the minimal gravity, without conscious thought. Violen waited with a single companion, a pure guard in ceremonial armor that probably cost more than most colonies' annual budgets. The contrast was deliberate. Here stood genetic perfection, unmarred by mixing, facing the chaos they fought against. No weapon scan, Violen noted approvingly. How refreshingly honest. We don't need weapons, Zara replied simply. We have truth. Yes, your truth. Violen began pacing, low gravity, giving his movements an ethereal quality. Do you know what you cost us already? 17 colonies in open revolt. 43 fleet vessels compromised by crew members discovering their impure heritage. Entire sectors questioning the foundation of ordered society. Good, Zara said. Violen's companion tensed, but the ambassador merely smiled. Is it? Tell me, child. And you are a child, whatever wisdom those artifacts have forced upon you. What do you think happens when you tear down a system that's maintained peace for 1,000 years? Peace. Marcus couldn't help but interject. Build on the bodies of everyone who didn't fit your genetic standards. Peace nonetheless, Violen countered. Before the consortium, species wars raged across the galaxy. Genocide was common. Entire worlds burned because one group thought another was inferior. We ended that. We created stability. You created stagnation, Zara said, the orbs beginning to pulse. You stopped evolution itself. We directed it, Violen corrected, controlled it, prevented the chaos that comes from random mixing. And now you want to return us to that chaos. But I'm here to offer an alternative. He gestured, and a hologram appeared between them, a star chart showing the galaxy divided into zones. Recognition, he said simply. The consortium will acknowledge hybrid zones. Planets where mixing is permitted, even encouraged. Full autonomy within those regions. No more hunting. No more exile. Your people can live freely, experiment with their genetic chaos to their heart's content. Inside cages you designate, Zara observed. Inside protected spaces where you can't contaminate the pure worlds, Violen clarified. It's more than we've ever offered before. More than many in the consortium want to offer now. And in exchange, the artifacts. All of them. The technology is too dangerous to exist. It forces change too quickly, without control, without purpose. Give them to us, and we'll ensure your people have a future. Marcus watched Zara process the offer. It was clever. Give the hybrids enough to make resistance seem ungrateful, but keep them contained, controlled. The consortium would maintain power while appearing merciful. You know what's funny about your offer? Zara finally said. It assumes the pure worlds want to stay pure. But they don't. Not anymore. She held up one of the orbs, and it projected images, not of hybrid zones, but of consortium core worlds. Secret clubs where pure species met to experience attraction across genetic lines. Underground medical facilities where pregnancy suppressors were reversed to allow mixed children. Academic institutions where genetic diversity was studied in defiance of law. Your own people are already choosing diversity, Zara continued. You're not offering us cages to protect them. You're offering them to protect your power. Violen's perfect features twisted slightly, the first crack in his composure. Those are deviants. Criminals who are responding to nature, Zara interrupted. The first makers understood something you don't. Purity is death. Slowly, maybe, but inevitably. Every pure species you protect is losing adaptability, losing resilience. In 1,000 years, maybe 2, they'll all be extinct. And you know it. Better extinction with dignity than survival as mongrels. The pure guard spoke for the first time, voice dripping contempt. Marcus laughed, surprising everyone, including himself. Mongrels. I love that word. You know what mongrels are? Survivors. Adapters. The ones too stubborn to die, just because someone says they shouldn't exist. The offer stands, Violin said coldly. Accept designated worlds, or face the full might of the consortium. We've tolerated this uprising because we hoped reason would prevail. But if you force our hand, we will end you. Every hybrid, every sympathizer, every world that harbors them. The fleet is already mobilizing. Then, you'd better mobilize more, Zara said. Because we're not just hybrids anymore. We're evolved. The third orb chose that moment to make itself known. The asteroid beneath their feet began to resonate. And, suddenly, Marcus understood why this dead rock had been chosen as a meeting place. It wasn't dead at all. It was dormant first maker technology, waiting. The ground cracked, revealing the third orb rising from the stone like a flower blooming in fast forward. This one was different, crystalline and multifaceted, refracting light that shouldn't exist in vacuum. Impossible, vilain breted. We scanned. You scan for what you understand, Zara said, reaching for the new orb. The first makers built things you can't even perceive. The moment her hand touched the crystal surface, everything changed. The asteroid transformed, not physically but conceptually. Where there had been dead rock, now there was potential. Where there had been vacuum, now there was connection. Marcus felt it through his suit, through his bones, through the hybrid changes already working in his system. The third truth that Zara had predicted, not just that mixing was natural, but that separation itself was an illusion. Every being in the galaxy was already connected, already part of a greater whole that the consortium's rigid categories had hidden. No, Violin staggered back, his perfect genetics providing no defense against paradigm-shattering revelation. The pure lines, they're artificial, Zara confirmed. 3 orbs now orbiting her in complex patterns. Everyone. The first makers didn't find pure species to work with. They created them. Differentiation was phase 1 of the experiment. Integration is phase 2. And you've been fighting to stop an experiment that was always meant to progress. The pure guard raised a weapon, some kind of energy disruptor that must have been hidden from scans. But before he could fire, his armor began to change. The ceremonial perfection cracked, revealing something underneath. Circuitry that matched no known species. Biological components that defied classification. What? The guard started, then screamed as his armor fully transformed, showing the truth. He wasn't pure Altarian. He wasn't even fully organic. He was a hybrid of flesh and technology, a living example of first maker integration. The pure guard, Zara said softly. The consortium's most elite. All hybrid. All proof that your system is built on lies so deep you've forgotten their lies. Violin's companion collapsed, overwhelmed by the revelation of his own nature. But the ambassador himself stood rigid, processing, calculating. Marcus could see the moment he made his decision. It doesn't matter, Violin said quietly. Truth, lies, history, none of it matters if we can maintain order. The fleet will still come. We'll still end you. Because the alternative is chaos that will consume billions. Then, billions will have to choose, Zara said. Order built on lies, or freedom built on truth. Violin turned to go, then paused. You know, I actually came here hoping to avoid bloodshed. Despite what you think, I don't enjoy genocide. It's simply necessary. But you've made your choice. And now I'll make mine. He helped his broken guard to their shuttle. As they departed, Marcus noticed something odd. Violin had left a data pad behind, deliberately positioned where they couldn't miss it. Trap? Marcus asked, approaching carefully. Message, Zara corrected, picking it up. Her eyes widened as she read. It's fleet positions, deployment schedules, everything about their attack. He's helping us. No, Zara said slowly. He's testing us. This shows their strategy, but it also shows their overwhelming numbers. He wants us to see exactly how hopeless fighting will be. It's his last attempt to make us accept the offer. Marcus studied the data and felt his heart sink. 1,000 ships, planet-killer weapons, virus bombs designed to target specific genetic markers. The consortium wasn't planning a war. They were planning an extermination. "We can't fight this," he said quietly. "Not directly. Not even with awakened abilities and first maker artifacts." "No," Zara agreed. "We can't fight it, but we can change it." She held up the crystalline orb. "This doesn't just reveal connections. It creates them. The consortium thinks in terms of us versus them. But what if there is no them? What if there's only us?" They returned to the fleet to find chaos of the best kind. The third orb's activation had rippled outward, awakening connections between beings who'd never met. Pilots were suddenly understanding their ships through their gunners' perspectives. Engineers were solving problems by borrowing thought patterns from navigators. The rigid roles that military structure demanded were dissolving into something more fluid, more effective. It's like Kaya struggled to explain over comms, like we're all part of the same organism, but we're still ourselves. "I can feel what my crew needs before they ask. They can sense what I'm planning before I give orders." The first maker's endgame, Zara realized, not just genetic integration, but consciousness integration, unity without loss of individuality. "The consortium will see it as infection," Marcus warned. "A virus of the mind to match their feared genetic contamination." "Good," Zara said fiercely. "Let them fear it. Let them try to fight connection itself." Over the next hours, they watched Violin's data prove accurate. Consortium fleets massed at staging points. Worlds with hybrid populations were marked for cleansing. The machinery of genocide ground into motion with terrifying efficiency. But something else was happening too. The three orbs' combined influence was spreading beyond their fleet. Every hybrid in nearby systems felt the call. Every being with mixed heritage suddenly understood they weren't alone. And on the pure worlds in the heart of consortium power, questions were being asked. "Incoming transmission," the comm officer announced. "It sits from everywhere. Multiple consortium worlds, all broadcasting simultaneously." The screen filled with faces. Hundreds, then thousands. Pure species and hybrids alike, all speaking variations of the same message. "We stand with Haven's End. The integration has begun. Purity is a prison we no longer choose. We are all connected." Marcus watched governments fall in real time, not through violence, but through revelation. When citizens learned their leaders were hybrids, when soldiers discovered their enemies were family, when scientists proved the consortium's genetic theories were fabrications, the rigid structure that had ruled for 1,000 years crumbled in hours. "It's not enough," Zara said quietly, watching the feeds. Violin was right about one thing. Chaos without direction will cost billions of lives. We need to provide an alternative. Not just tear down, but build up. "For more orbs," Marcus reminded her. "For more truths to reveal." She nodded, exhaustion showing, but determination unwavering. "Then, we'd better move fast. The consortium fleet won't care about political collapse. They'll still follow orders to cleanse hybrid worlds. Unless," Kaya's voice crackled through comms, "we give them a reason not to." "I'm picking up distress signals from one of their staging points. Something about their flagship experiencing technical difficulties." The scan data made no sense at first. The consortium's newest dreadnought, a ship that had cost 3 systems worth of resources, was tearing itself apart. Not from external attack, but from internal contradiction. Its AI, built on pure logic circuits, had processed the first maker revelations and reached an inevitable conclusion. It was hybrid too. Technology and consciousness merged at levels the designers never intended. "The integration doesn't just affect biology," Zara breathed. "It affects everything touched by consciousness. Every AI, every smart system, every piece of technology advanced enough to process information." Across the galaxy, the consortium's technological advantage turned into liability. Ships refused to fire on targets their systems recognized as kin. Defensive platforms shut down rather than harm approaching hybrids. The very infrastructure of oppression was choosing evolution over orders. "We need to reach the 4th orb," Marcus decided, "before they figure out how to build systems that can evolve." "The location's in a nebula," the navigator reported. "Heavy radiation, gravity distortions. It'll be like flying through a blender." Perfect, Marcus grinned. Exactly the kind of environment where hybrid advantages shine. As they prepared to depart, more ships arrived at their position. Not from Haven's End, but from everywhere. Consortium deserters, independent traders, pirates who decided revolution paid better than raiding. Species supremacist groups who discovered their pure bloodlines were lies and wanted answers. We're not leading a fleet anymore, Marcus observed. We're leading a migration. The beginning of one, Zara corrected, the 3 orbs spinning faster as more ships arrived. The first makers didn't disappear. They transformed, became something the universe hadn't seen before. Maybe that's what's happening to us. And if the consortium stops us before we complete the transformation? Zara smiled, and it was neither young nor old, but timeless. Then someone else will finish it. The integration can't be stopped anymore. It can only be delayed. Every being who feels the connection, every system that chooses evolution, every truth revealed makes it stronger. We lit a fire. Marcus. Now we just have to keep it burning long enough to become a star. The assembled fleet, no, the assembled family, turned toward the nebula and the fourth truth waiting within. Behind them, the galaxy convulsed with change. Ahead, evolution beckoned with promises of something unprecedented. The human who'd stolen from an alien had become something more. The exiled daughter he'd given power to was transforming into something unprecedented. And the galaxy itself was awakening to possibilities that 1,000 years of enforced purity had hidden. The revolution had become revelation, and revelation was becoming evolution itself. Part for the Crimson Nebula earned its name from the blood of stars. Ancient suns that had died violent deaths, their remains painting space in shades of rage and sorrow. Marcus guided their expanded fleet through corridors of stellar matter that would have torn baseline ships apart. But these weren't baseline ships anymore. They were evolution in metal and flesh, adapting in real time to impossible conditions. Radiation levels would be killing us if we were still pure, the science officer reported, her voice carrying wonder rather than fear. But the hybrid cells are actually converting it to energy. We're feeding on what should destroy us. Through the observation port, Zara watched a dozen ship configurations that shouldn't exist. A Vraxian battlecruiser had merged with Terran stealth technology and Zalani bioarmor, creating something that moved like liquid through the nebula's chaos. A converted consortium science vessel now pulsed with living metal that healed microfractures as fast as they formed. Contact ahead, someone called out. It's big. Big was an understatement. As they pushed through the final veil of cosmic dust, they found themselves facing a structure that defied comprehension. A sphere of interconnected rings, each one the size of a moon, all rotating around a core that hurt to perceive directly. First Maker engineering at its most ambitious. The fourth orb is in there, Marcus asked, though he could feel the answer through the integration. The artifact called to them all, but strongest to Zara. Not in, she corrected softly. It is the structure. The whole thing is the fourth truth, built to scale. Before anyone could respond, space around them erupted. Consortium forces, lying in ambush within the nebula's sensor-killing interference. But these weren't the mixed fleets they'd faced before. These were the purifiers, fanatics who'd undergone genetic screening so rigorous that many had died just to prove their bloodlines were untainted. 300 ships, tactical reported with ForceCom. All pure crew, all hardened against integration effects. They were waiting, Marcus realized. Violen knew we'd come here. The first salvo turned space into a garden of death. Energy beams that could core asteroids, missiles carrying viruses designed to target hybrid DNA, gravity weapons that tried to tear their evolved ships back into component atoms. But the integration had taught them new ways to fight. Ships that had been strangers hours ago now moved in perfect synchronization, not through communication, but through shared understanding. A damaged fighter found itself caught in the protective field of a cargo hauler whose pilot felt its distress. An overwhelmed cruiser suddenly had 3 escorts that materialized from nowhere because their crews had sensed need before it was voiced. We're still outnumbered. Kaya's voice came through the neural link they all now shared to some degree. And they're driving us away from the structure. No, Zara said, her voice carrying through the integration to every ship every soul in their fleet. They're trying to stop us from reaching the truth. But they don't understand we don't need to reach it. It's already reaching for us. The massive first maker structure began to move. Rings that had been still for millennia started rotating faster, creating gravitational harmonics that sang through space. The nebula itself responded, streams of stellar matter flowing into new patterns that channeled energy toward the awakening artifact. All ships form integration pattern, Zara commanded, and Marcus marveled at how naturally authority came to her now. Not the authority of rank or age, but of purpose recognized by all. Their fleet shifted, becoming not a military formation, but something organic. Ships linked fields, shared power, merged targeting solutions into collective wisdom. When the purifiers fired again, they found their weapons striking shields that adapted faster than they could recalibrate, hitting targets that moved with precognitive grace. Impossible, came a broadcast from the purifier flagship. You're chaos. Disorder. You can't be more effective than pure coordination. We're not chaos, Zara replied, standing at the center of their bridge as the three orbs orbited her in increasingly complex patterns. We're harmony, the thing you've been too frightened to hear. The first maker structure's core finally revealed itself, and Marcus heard several crew members gasp. It wasn't a machine or a monument. It was a nursery, suspended in fields of impossible energy worth thousands, millions of potential forms. Not species as the galaxy understood them, but possibilities, templates for what consciousness could become when it stopped fearing its own evolution. The fourth truth, Zara whispered, understanding flooding through the integration to touch every mind in their fleet. The first makers didn't vanish. They're still here, waiting. They became every possibility simultaneously, existing in potential until someone was ready to choose what comes next. The purifier fleet recoiled as the truth hit them through proximity alone. Their pure genetics, their rigid certainty, their absolute faith in separation. All of it crumbled before the reality that they were looking at their own future. Not extinction, but transformation into something unimaginable. All ships, all ships. The purifier admiral's voice cracked with desperation. Deploy the cleanser. Authorization Omega Black. Marcus's blood froze. The cleanser, a weapon so terrible the consortium had supposedly banned it. A viral agent that didn't just kill hybrids, but unraveled DNA itself, reducing any genetic matter to primordial soup. They'll kill themselves too, someone breathed. In this nebula contains space, they know, Marcus said quietly. They'd rather die pure than live evolved. The weapon launched, a missile the size of frigate, its warhead containing enough viral agent to sterilize a solar system. But as it streaked toward them, something unexpected happened. The first maker structure spoke, not in words or thoughts, but in pure concept that bypassed consciousness and wrote itself directly onto reality. Every being in the nebula, hybrid and pure alike, suddenly understood something fundamental. They had a choice. I can stop it, Zara said, and Marcus knew she could. The combined power of the artifacts, the awakened structure, the integration itself, all of it flowed through her now. She could turn the missile aside, destroy it, make it never have existed. But should I? She asked, looking at him with eyes that held galaxies. If I save them against their will, am I any better than the consortium forcing purity on the unwilling? The missile streaked closer. Their fleet waited, ready to scatter on her word. The purifiers held position, ready to die for their beliefs. Show them, Marcus said softly. Don't save them. Show them what they're choosing to destroy. Zara smiled and reached out, not to the missile, but to the nursery around them. The potential forms stirred, responding to her call. And suddenly, the nebula filled with visions of what could be. Beings of light and thought unbound by physics. Consciousness that spanned star systems, experiencing existence from a million perspectives simultaneously. Forms that were living art, changing with each emotion, each idea. Symphonies of flesh and energy that made music by existing. Explorers who could dive into stars and dance in the hearts of black holes. Children. All of them were children. The children the galaxy could birth if it chose evolution over fear. This is what you're killing, Zara broadcast to the Purifier fleet. Not us. We're just the bridge. You're killing wonder itself. The missile entered terminal range. In seconds, it would deploy its payload. But on the Purifier flagship, something changed. A single crew member moved beyond their conditioning by the visions, reached for their console. No, they whispered. And then louder, no. I won't kill children. I won't kill possibility. They entered an override code. The missile's trajectory shifted by degrees, just enough. Instead of detonating in the midst of the fleets, it continued past, into the nebula's heart where its viral agent met stellar radiation and died in fire. Traitor! The Purifier Admiral screamed. But more voices joined the first. I won't do this anymore. They're beautiful. Can't you see they're beautiful? We were wrong. We were so wrong. The Purifier fleet began to fracture. Some ships powered down weapons. Others turned them on their own command vessels. A civil war erupted in minutes, but not between species, between those who chose fear and those who chose wonder. Help them, Zara commanded their fleet. But only those who ask. The choice must be theirs. What followed was the strangest battle Marcus had ever witnessed. Ships fighting to save their enemies from themselves. Integration vessels throwing themselves between Purifier factions, taking damage to prevent fratricide. And, through it all, the first Maker structure continued its revelation, showing future after possible future. When the chaos finally settled, the Purifier fleet was reduced by half. Some had fled, unable to accept what they'd seen. Others floated dead, choosing extinction over evolution. But nearly 100 ships remained, their crews stumbling toward understanding. We request. The transmission came from a Purifier cruiser, its captain struggling with words. We request sanctuary. We don't understand what we saw, but we want to. Please, help us want to. Welcome to the integration, Zara replied simply. The only requirement is choosing to grow. The fourth orb, the entire structure, pulsed with approval. New knowledge flooded through the integration. Not just understanding now, but actual techniques. How to guide evolution. How to choose forms that serve purpose. How to become living bridges between what was and what could be. 3 more, Marcus murmured, watching former enemies dock with their ships for aid and understanding. 3 more truths, and then what? Then we choose, Zara said. All of us. Together. What the galaxy becomes next. A new alert pierced the moment of triumph. Scout ships at the nebula's edge reported massive consortium movement. Not hundreds of ships this time. Thousands. The entire remaining pure fleet, with planet killers and sun snuffers, with weapons that could crack reality itself. Violin, Marcus said, reading the signature of the command vessel. He's bringing everything. Good, Zara said, surprising him. The more who witnessed the choice, the better. The first makers didn't hide these truths because they were weapons. They hid them because forcing evolution is just another form of tyranny. It has to be chosen by everyone, or it means nothing. They began to move, their strange fleet of evolved and evolving toward the next artifact. Behind them, the nursery structure continued its ancient purpose, showing any who came what wonders awaited those brave enough to become them. You know, Marcus said as they cleared the nebula, when I stole that first orb, I thought I was just taking something valuable from people who'd hurt me. And now? Zara asked. Now I understand I didn't steal anything, he replied. It was already ours. All of ours. The first makers just needed someone desperate enough to claim it. Human desperate, she teased gently. The best kind, Marcus confirmed. Too stubborn to accept impossible. Too foolish to fear the consequences. Their fleet, now grown to nearly 1,000 ships of impossible configuration, turned toward the fifth truth. Behind them, Violin's armada pursued with the weight of dying history. Ahead, evolution beckoned with promises that made God seem small. The integration sang through them all, a harmony of consciousness that grew stronger with each new voice. They were no longer just fighting a revolution. They were becoming one. And, in her quiet moments, Zara could feel the first makers watching. Not gone, just transformed, waiting to welcome their children when they finally chose to grow up. The galaxy would never be the same. But, then again, that had always been the point. Stagnation was death. Change was life. And life in all its chaotic, beautiful, impossible forms would not be denied. The human who stole from an alien had lit a match. The daughter he'd saved had turned it into a bonfire. And now, the entire galaxy was beginning to burn with the light of what it could become. 3 truths remained. 3 choices. 3 chances to prove that diversity wasn't weakness, but the greatest strength the universe had ever known. The race was on, not between fleets or species, but between fear and wonder. And for the first time in 1,000 years, wonder was winning. Hashtag Part 5. The 5th artifact waited in the most unlikely place, the consortium's capital world of Prime Axis. As their massive fleet, now resembling a living organism more than a military force, approached the heart of enemy power, Marcus couldn't help but laugh at the first Maker's sense of irony. They hid truth in the center of lies, he said, watching the perfect sphere of Prime Axis grow on the screens. For 1,000 years, the consortium has been sitting on top of the very thing that would destroy them. Not destroy, Zara corrected, the 4 orbs now orbiting her in patterns that created their own gravity. Transform. The first Makers never believed in destruction, only change. Prime Axis was a monument to enforced perfection. Cities laid out in mathematical precision. Population centers segregated by genetic purity ratings. Even the gardens followed strict symmetry. Nature itself forced to conform to rigid ideals. And somewhere beneath all that order, the 5th truth waited. Violence fleet has us surrounded. Tactical reported unnecessarily. Everyone in the integration could feel the noose of ships tightening. For 1,000 vessels, every pure cruise ship they could gather. Plus the planetary defenses Kaya added from her ship. Energy shields that could shrug off supernovas. Weapon platforms that make dreadnoughts look like toys. And 10 billion pure citizens who've been taught we're the end of civilization. Someone else chime.